cloud.
Got it.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right.
You're good to go.
Okay. And now we should be going into slideshow mode. Can you guys see?
I can still see your side slides, so I don't think you're in presentation mode yet.
Why is it not going into? Here we go. This might do it. There we go. All right.
Beautiful.
Okay, and I got a little laser pointer. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. I know that everybody has a little bit of Zoom fatigue. It's been hard, and this is the beginning of our program for the fall season. And so I thank you for coming, even though this is a Zoom presentation. The idea for this slideshow, as Kristen mentioned, originated several weeks ago when I got the corny idea that I was going to scan in several of my slides from field work that I conducted. It's going on 38, 40 years now. My goal is not to give you a technical talk about sagebrush-grass vegetation and overwhelm you with technical data. My goal is to inspire you with images of the Great Basin and the plants and some of the rare plants that occur therein. And let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the origins of the flora, talk a little bit about exploration in the Great Basin, the different species and subspecies of sagebrush, what I in fact did, and the different habitat types that I identified, or associations, if you'd like to call them that. And then when we, excuse me, when we get to the mountain ranges, I created a little slideshow and I put some music to it and everything. And so we're going to see a little 10-minute slideshow because there's so many photographs and so many things I could say, but I decided I didn't want to overwhelm you with me talking. So I put a bunch of slides together and I put some music together. And so we're going to see 10 minutes of mountain ranges and listen to some music. And then we'll come back from that. And if you're not totally bored to death, we'll spend another 10 minutes looking at some of the rare habitats and species. Now, first, in terms of talking about the origins of the flora, let's define what the Great Basin is. You probably already know. Looking at this figure over here on the left, this line, hopefully everybody can see that I'm outlining a line here. If you can't, pop up in the chat and let me know. But the Great Basin is an area within which all precipitation falls and runs internally. It doesn't run out to the ocean. So within the Great Basin, it's a physiographic unit basically, and all precipitation runs internally and empties internally. Now on the right side of the screen, you see an old historical map taken from David Rumsey Maps of Lake Lahontan. Well, okay, what's all this got to do with Black Rock and Burning Man? Well, I sort of put that in there because I wanted to rope you in and you know how that kind of stuff goes. But there is a connection, and it's the Pleistocene. Lake Lahontan, which you see here on the right, is this huge lake that existed in Nevada during the Pleistocene. You can see here Lake Tahoe down in the corner. Everyone knows where Lake Tahoe is, the border of California and Nevada, going northward here. Idaho and Nevada over here. Reno is right about here. You go from Reno up to Pyramid Lake and woohoo, the Black Rock Range and the Black Rock Desert. Well, the Black Rock Desert was 500 feet underwater during the Pleistocene. Now, jumping over here to the mountain ranges that I sampled the connection basically is that all these mountain ranges during the Pleistocene were glaciated. So there you have it. It's a little far-fetched, but the connection between limestone and bristlecone is that the mountain ranges were glaciated during the Pleistocene, and the Black Rock Desert was underwater during the Pleistocene. Now, how do we know about the flora in Nevada? There were several explorers in the area, and we're going to focus on, at least initially, on this first one, which is Clarence King's geological survey, which occurred in 1867. This is a map that was taken out of the botany report that came from that expedition. We're going to talk a little bit more about the author of that report. But again, over here is Pyramid Lake, and down below in this lower corner is Reno. And essentially this geological expedition traveled across the state of Nevada, basically following the Humboldt River all the way across the state of Nevada. And I believe they surveyed within 100 kilometers north and south of the Humboldt River. Now, in an earlier slide, there was mention of Seneca Watson. You probably all have heard of Seneca Watson. You've heard of plant species that have been named after him. Well, one important thing about Seneca Watson is that he found botany later in his life. He was born in Connecticut. He grew up on a farm, so he was kind of a hefty guy. He went to Yale, he taught school, he dabbled in medicine, he bounced around from Iowa to Illinois to Alabama. He went back to Yale and studied chemistry and mineralogy. And then he finally said, well, I'm going to California. And he set out for California. And in those days, you had to take a steamer. And so he ended up in San Francisco, crossed the Great Valley, crossed the Sierra, and ended up in the camp of Clarence King, who the year before had been in New Haven, Connecticut, where Seneca Watson had been. No doubt they'd had some sort of a conversation. Anyway, the story is that he walked into camp barefoot with his shoes over his shoulder and his pack on his back, and he said, give me a job to do. And the botanist of the expedition was a rather sickly or ailing fellow, and over time got worse and worse, and Seneca Watson eventually took over the position of the botanist. And in 1871, he wrote the report of botany from the expedition. And this report includes 40 beautifully line-drawn illustrated plates of many of the plant species that he found during their expedition. Now, moving on through the years since then, in 1925, Ivar Tidestrom developed a flora. And then the most significant development since then has been the publication of the Intermountain Flora, which, again, many of you are probably familiar with this. Volume 1 came out in 1972, and Volume 7 came out in 2017. And in the interim, the 40 years in between, there were 7 volumes prepared, a total of 9 books by Arthur Conquest, Arthur Holmgren, Noel Holmgren, and James Reveal. It's a huge effort undertaken that took 40 years, and it's just a wonderful resource. And now you can go online to Intermountain Biota, and you can track down collections and species and great things like that. Now, you can't talk about Intermountain Flora without mentioning these 2 folks. The gentleman on the left is Arnold Jerry Team. Now, granted, this was 1982, so his hair's a little less abundant and a little grayer right now. He's now the curator at the University of Nevada, Reno Herbarium. And squatting down across from him is Rupert Barnaby, who's the author of the Fabales section of the Intermountain Flora. And what they are looking at is a plant named Stroganoia temii at the time. It's since been reclassified, and the name is escaping me right now. It's a member of the Brassicaceae. At the time it was discovered, it was considered to be a rare plant. The woman in the middle is Jerry Team's old girlfriend. These are just two people that can't go without mention when you talk about botanists of the Great Basin. There have been many others, but I just wanted to mention these folks. And now let's talk about the taxonomy of big sagebrush, Artemisia tridentata. And the reason it's called tridentata is, of course, because of these 3 tridentate leaves at the top. Now I'm going to throw at you 7 or 8 factoids about sagebrush, one of which is that all of the subspecies of Artemisia tridentata support sage grouse. You may know that this is a rather rare bird, and you've probably seen or heard about their leks and their displays, and they're just a beautiful. I'm not a bird biologist, but they are just a beautiful bird, and their habitat is within sagebrush grasslands primarily. Artemisia is also used by indigenous peoples. It's used for smudging, and it's also used for things like alleviating toothaches and stomach ailments and things of that nature. It is a wind pollinated plant. Now, what you're looking at here, as you can see from the photograph, is Artemisia tridentata subspecies wyomingensis. And the way you can tell wyomingensis is the flared out nature of these 3 upper tridentate portions of the leaf. Now, when we shift to looking at Artemisia tridentata subspecies tridentata, if you look at the leaf of tridentata, you see that it's much more linear. It is barely tridentate. You can see the 3 points at the tip, but it's a much more linear leaf, and it's not splayed out at the edge like wyomingensis is. It's a much more linear type leaf. It also gets to be much taller and lives to be 50 to 100 years old. Many of the Artemisia can live to be that old. Now, some of the other factoids about Artemisia, moving on to Artemisia tridentata subspecies Vassiana. I say sometimes Artemisia because it's easier to, you're less likely to misspell the genus if you say Artemisia, because it's M-I-S-I-A. And so if you say Artemisia, you're less likely to misspell it. Anyway, the chemistry of sagebrush varies by species and by subspecies. And one of the things I did at each of my sample sites was I collected specimens at each sample site, and I would go back to the lab at the university and take the leaves, pop them in water, and get my little UV light out and see if they fluoresced, because mountain big sagebrush leaves fluoresce under UV light, but basin big sagebrush does not. So this became a very crucial, because sometimes just looking at, the aspect of the plant, I should say that Vassiana, one way of differentiating it is it tends to have this sort of flat topped appearance here. You can see the inflorescences coming up off of the top, and the rest of the plant tends to be sort of flat shaped, like so. But you can also tell it apart by doing this UV inflorescence test when you look at the leaves. So we talked about the chemistry. Another important fact about sagebrush is it doesn't sprout after fire, so it's very susceptible to fire. It's also a preferred browse species for mule deer. Now, this is right out of my thesis, and I apologize. This is, the 30-year-old graphic from my thesis and the talk that I gave, years ago. But this is a diagrammatic representation of where the species occur on the landscape. And you see that down here in the lower valley floor, next to stream sides, you find Artemisia tridentata, subspecies Tridentata, on deep, well-drained soils. They do not like standing water. And then as you move up the hillside, you get subspecies Wyomingensis. Generally, you pass through the pinyon juniper stands, and you get into then Artemisia tridentata subspecies Vassiana stands. And then, which thoroughly tended to confuse me, when you get up higher in elevation, you find the different species, Artemisia arbuscula and Artemisia nova, on the ridges. These are also very low growing plants, and they're sometimes can be confused. Artemisia arbuscula and Artemisia tridentata can often be confused. Artemisia tridentata subspecies Vassiana. There's a mesic form of Vassiana called Forma spiciformis that you can find on mesic sites. So what did I do after all that? As Kristen said, I'm not going to repeat everything she said. I spent 2 summers and collected field data. What I'm going to do is share a story with you. I've got my field guide here. I want to read to you one little paragraph about this 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets down. You see it says we had at least flat tires. Well, listen to this from my journal, my field guide from 21 July 1983. Had lunch in Denio, cleaned up, shampooed, bought ice, and headed for the Montana mountains where PTT, that was my major professor, PTT had recommended sampling. However, truck began swerving and sliding, and halfway through the Bilk Creek Mountains, we realized we had a flat tire. We turned around, not wanting to hike 10 miles back to the road, and drove back out, getting about 5 miles closer to the highway before the tire finally split. We then headed for the highway with 2 quarts of water, Misha, that's the name of my dog at the time, the tire, and a little bit of craziness. Well, I read this when I was going through the slides, and I thought, why in the world would we, here we were rolling this tire in front of us with water and my dog, and we were walking 5 miles through, 100-degree desert. And I thought, why in the world did we do something so silly? And then I looked back in my field guide and saw that we'd gotten a flat tire the day before, and we hadn't gotten a spare tire. And so I thought, okay, well, that explains why in the world we were rolling a tire through the desert. And that just is an example of the types of things that I had totally forgotten that I experienced when I went through this field work. Now, as I said, we sampled 30 mountain ranges. I'm going to zoom in on this. This is a diagram of the primary mountain ranges that I sampled. Everywhere that you see that it's white, that's the elevations that are above 8,000 feet. And these areas where you see just this line, the solid line, those are above 6,000 feet in elevation. And then you see these dotted lines, those are merely lines that surround, that show where a particular habitat type tended to occur. So for example, over here in area number 4, that's where I think it's the Idaho Fescue Western needlegrass tended to occur with Artemisia vassiana. The 3-letter codes are the mountain range codes. And then these little triangles these are places where we saw where these were sample locations. So you can see in the Ruby Mountains, we had 3 different areas where we sampled. And sometimes one particular triangle can represent 3 different sample sites. So some mountain ranges had 8 sample sites, some had 2 or 3, etc. So these are the various sample sites. And this is just an example. I'm not going to go into this. As I said, this is the Decarena ordination on the left and the twin span classification on the right. Basically, we took all the species data from the rapid assessments, put them into the computer, and it spits out it groups them together into basically the habitat types and the associations. So, what was the outcome? I had 7 habitat types or associations identified, and I'm gonna run through each of them. I decided if I was gonna show slides, I at least had to sort of show slides of the habitat types, but I realized that in showing slides of sagebrush-grass habitat types, they all kind of look alike when you see pictures of them. There's sagebrush and there's grass, and you know, they look very similar. I would like to at least point out, though, that in California, and again, I was working in Nevada, but in California, looking at the Manual of California Vegetation, which is Sawyer, Keeler, Wolf, and Evans, Mountain Big Sagebrush Shrubland Alliance is what it's referred to. And there are 10 associations in California, and 4 of them include graminoids. There are also several in the National Vegetation Classification System, and they include shrub types and herbaceous types also. So the first one that we're gonna see a picture of here is mountain big sage, blue bunch wheatgrass. This occurs throughout the study area. This happens to be actually in the Jarbidge Mountains. And just by way of
Oh,
whoa, hello. Okay.
I'll just chime in with this little mini interruption and note that I think there's a few people that are unmuted, so it's a good time to double check that everyone's muted except Melissa. Thank you.
Okay. Just to give you a little, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the names of the mountain ranges as we go through this. And you know, this is probably going to be the driest part of the talk, you guys. So hold on, bear with me here. The Jarbidge Mountains, the indigenous name for the Jarbidge Mountains is Jahabich, which means devil, supposedly. And the reason for that is supposedly the indigenous peoples associated the diabolic power of volcanism in the area with the devil. And so you can see actually the evidence of volcanism, the volcanic rock in this picture. And so the name was Jahabich, and that got turned into Jarbidge. The dominant grasses in this area, blue bunch wheatgrass on the right, Agropyron spicatum, and I think the name has been changed to Pseudoregnaria. I'm not exactly sure on that, but it may have changed. And California brome on the left. And then moving on to the second type, which was dominated by blue bunch wheatgrass and mutton grass. This is in the Snake Range, and just a little bit of trivia about the Snake Range. Most people may or may not know that Boundary Peak is the highest peak in Nevada, and that's in the White Mountains. In the Snake Range, the 6 next highest elevation peaks next highest elevation peaks in Nevada are in the Snake Range. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that after the White Mountains and Boundary Peak, that the next 6 highest peaks are in the Snake Range. The Blue Bunch Wheatgrass Mutton Grass Association occurs then at the highest elevations. And then the third type is Spike Fescue June grass, and it tended to occur adjacent to these mountain mahogany stands. You can see here in the background, the mountain mahogany. We had eight, this is in the monitor range, we had 8 sample sites here. Dominant grasses, again, Spike Fescue, Leucopoa kingii, which was one of the dominants in that last association that we just looked at. And then Idaho Fescue, which will be the dominant in the next association that we talk about. Big sagebrush, Idaho Fescue, Western needlegrass. This is in the Pine Grove Hills near Mono County, California. You can see that this is near the pinyon juniper habitat. You can see the pinyon pines in the background here. This particular area is near areas that were once proposed as critical habitat for the bi-state population of sage grouse. As you may or may not know, it was once considered for threatened status. And I don't think that's, I'm not sure of all the history on that, but I don't think that's being considered anymore. And I happen to be a buff, an Eroganum buff, and this is where we found this really cute little Eroganum cespitosum matted buckwheat in the Pine Grove Hills near Mono County. The 5th type, and remember there's only 7, so we only have a couple more to go. Mountain big sagebrush, wild rye, California brome. And we had 7 sample sites here in the Independence range. This had the highest number of releves, this particular type. And then mountain big sagebrush, Idaho Fescue, California brome in the Jarbidge Mountains again. Now this was at the higher elevations of the Jarbidge Mountains. We had 14 samples total in the Jarbidge Mountains, very at the northeasternmost portion of the state. And that was all done in 1982. Now the most common plants that we encountered in most of the stands, these are 4 of the most common plants we encountered. Up here in the upper left is Eroganum umbulatum. You may recognize this plant. It's a very beautiful plant. It grows down in this area. A lot of people plant it in their gardens. Balsamorhiza sagittata, you can see this on the east side of the Sierra. Eroganum heracleoides was also very common within the stands that we sampled, and Senecio canis over here on the lower left. The last stand, this is in the Ruby Mountains, the Idaho Fescue Blue Bunch Wheatgrass Shrubland Association, occurred at lower elevations in the north. This is Paul Tullar, my major professor here. At lower elevations in the north, and then at higher elevations in the central part of the state, this is the Toyabe range. Just to look, one little factoid about the Ruby Mountains, which we just saw back here, this is the most heavily glaciated range in Nevada. You can see some of the snow in the upper portion of that slide there. And then the Toyabes are one of the central mountain ranges. And now we're moving on to the mountain ranges, and we're going to have a little bit of fun here in a minute, hopefully, if the slideshow works. I wanted to tell you that the way I've organized this is according to, I've used the Intermountain Flora floristic divisions. Cronquist has subdivided the Great Basin into sections based on vegetation and physiographic features. And so there's the lake section. You'll see this a little bit in the slideshow. And the lake section, the Reno section, the calcareous mountain sections. And just to point a point of interest, the white pine range actually has no white pines. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the central Great Basin section, which is the most extensive, has several mountain ranges in it. And we're going to see all of these as we move into the slideshow, which I'm going to show you momentarily. These names, and especially the indigenous peoples' names, are taken from Alvin McLean's reference from 1978. It's a great book called Silent Cordilleras. It discusses all the mountain ranges in the state of Nevada. It's a great little book. So now I am going to, let's see, how should I do this? I'm going to escape out of this. Let's see. I'm going to have to stop share, and then I'm going to share again. Well, let's see, how do I do this? Okay, I have to start up the slideshow and then share. Hold on, folks. Here we go. That's not it. Documents. This is what I want. Do I drag this over to there?
Are you looking at two screens, Melissa?
Let's see.
I think typically when you go to share your screen, it will bring up a window that shows you all of the open programs or applications that you have. Is that right? And you should be able to pick which of your various windows to share with the group.
Okay, hold on.
It's been a few months since we zoomed really hard, folks.
Yeah, sorry, folks. Okay.
It's all good. We took the summer off of zooming.
Yeah, I should have practiced this. Maybe if I drag it, if I drag the icon to, what is this? Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. Now
So when you click share screen, what happens?
It doesn't come, the program. Okay, let me get out of this. Okay, there's that. Okay, I have Finder. How do I get it from Finder to, now let me try sharing my screen. Here we go. Now I got it. Okay, I'm going to share Finder. Okay, and now when I click on this, get your sound and your popcorn ready. Can you see it?
No, we still just see your Finder window.
Nothing's coming up?
No, I can hear the background music, but the video is not on the screen.
Oh, darn it.
So whatever the video playing software program is that you have is just not selected for your screen share. So whatever you did to select this Finder window as your screen share, do that and then select your video player.
Okay, say that again.
So you did something to select Finder, your Finder window for the screen share. And I don't know exactly, you have a Mac, I don't have a Mac, but whatever you did on your end to bring up the window that let you choose this particular, the Finder window to share, go back and do that again. So probably exit screen share and do it again, but this time select the whatever video program you have.
Well, maybe this is not going to work. It says I'm still screen sharing. Can you guys see my
You are.
screen?
You are, but what we can see is your Finder window. So we can see a list of documents.
Right. And see what what I was hoping is that when I click on this, it would just play.
So what Zoom does is it will share one program at a time. And right now it's sharing Finder, but we want it to share, I don't know what the video playing program is on your computer, but like Apple Play or whatever the program is that actually plays the video.
Well, we can try it this way. Okay. We'll try this one.
I think it's still only going to share the Finder window. So if you can go to the thing where it allows you to select which program to share, like PowerPoint or Finder, or you could share a web browser window. It can only share one window at a time is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And right now it's sharing your list of files.
Okay. So you can't just click.
No, you have to tell it to share that other window. Whatever program opens up when you double click that, you have to tell it to share that window specifically.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but let me, okay, here's new share.
There you go.
Hold shift to select multiple windows. Hold shift. Does that do it? No. Opening slideshow. Well, this might, what can you guys see now?
We can still just see your Finder window. It might be worth, before we totally give up, to unshare this, to stop sharing, and then to try to relaunch your share one more time with the new understanding that it won't help you to select the Finder window, but that you have to have the program open, the video playing program, and you have to select that.
Okay, stop share. I'm so sorry, you guys.
I don't think we've lost anybody yet. Maybe just the problem solving is fun people watching. Okay, so we've got your Finder window back. Did it let you still select what to share?
I can. Okay. What do you mean? Did it let me select what to share?
So again, it might be different on a Mac, but I think normally if you have multiple programs open and you say select or share my screen, it usually pops up a window and says, which thing do you want to share? Do you want
and it's not doing, yeah, for some reason it's not doing that.
Oh, that's really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just can see your Finder window. So
So
unless you can tell it to share the video player, we're just going to keep seeing your Finder window.
Okay, so you can't right now, you're not seeing this slideshow thing?
No, and it's because it's a different program. So I know it popped up on your screen and you can see it, but you're not sharing that window, so we can't see it.
Share screen. Okay, here, let's try this.
Okay, Photo Magico 5, Nevada mountains. And it looks like maybe it's loading. Is it loading?
Are you seeing anything yet?
Yeah, we can see this program. Do you play your video with Photo Magico?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you have the right window selected. And is it opening?
Yeah, let me see what happens here. This is not exactly how I expected it to work. Let's see what happens here. Can you see it now? What are you seeing?
We see the Photo Magico like program initiation screen.
Okay, so you're not seeing it.
No, with a list
All
of
right.
files on the right.
It's not gonna work, you guys, darn it. I thought I could. I can't get it to work, darn it.
Well, I can hear the music. It sounds like you worked hard on it.
Darn it. Darn it. Oh, shoot. Let's get out of that.
Yeah, Russell did say if the file is big, it might take time to load, but the music is playing and.
All right, well, what I can do is let it, I'll minimize it and we'll have the music in the back. I can go through the rest of the slideshow and then we can try again.
All right.
How's that?
Yeah, if you have more slides, then yeah, pick up momentum again and do that.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Zoom live. So now you have to reshare your presentation.
All right, now I have to find it again. Okay, load it up. Okay. See, this is funny because okay. Now I have it. Share screen. There it is. So you can hear the music from the slideshow and everything but that. All right. Okay.
All right, presentation back up.
Yep, back up. So,
slideshow, hit presenter mode.
All right, I'm gonna turn that down. All right, so let's pretend we saw the mountain ranges.
You're not in.
Maybe we'll get to it.
You're not in presenter
and
mode.
talk about rare habitats. I'm gonna start with rare habitats close to Reno. And the first one, there are 3 species that occur at Steamboat Hot Springs in Washoe County, near Reno. And this is a geothermal area about 10 or 11 miles south of Reno. This is the area right here. And you can see here, this is actually a little monkey flower right here. You can see these cracks in the ground and little steam rising, typical geothermal area. This particular one, the water is only 75 to 95 degrees. I believe that there's a spa in this area now. I'm not exactly sure since I've been away from that area for a while. But here's the Steamboat Buckwheat, Eroganum ovalifolium variety Williamsii. It's named after Margaret Williams, who's the founder of the Northern Nevada Native Plant Society. And it's federally and state listed as endangered. It occurs here at the Steamboat Springs. I spent a lot of time because in graduate school, I lived in Reno and I spent a lot of time sort of exploring the Steamboat Springs area. That's why I know a little bit about these plants. In this particular photograph, you see the habitat with the little mounds of the Eroganum occurring in the foreground here and the Sierras in the background. Another plant occurring in that same area is the Steamboat monkey flower. Oh, sorry. Diplicus ovatus, really attractive little plant. And again, another buckwheat, the altered andesite buckwheat, Eroganum robustum. It was formerly considered a subspecies of Eroganum lobii robustum, Eroganum lobii. It is BLM and Forest Service sensitive. And here, again, same habitat looking the other direction. This is looking towards the east, but here you see the little plants in the foreground, very abundant in this location. Now, transitioning to the southern part of the state, many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Ash Meadows or even have been there. It's a very unique habitat. It's a high priority conservation site. It's comprised of multiple spring habitats, and you could spend a whole talk just talking about Ash Meadows and how it developed and things like that. I'm just going to show you one photograph of that area. or two photographs, but one particular species, and that's Astragalus phoenix, which occurs here at Big Spring, I believe. This is the typical habitat. Edward O. Wilson calls Ash Meadows a sacred landmark to those who know natural history. It's a really, really unique place. I spent a whole, I went down there on a field trip with a whole bunch of other fellow graduate students, and we spent quite a bit of time down there. Okay, transitioning to the eastern part of the state and the limestone and bristlecone areas. I don't actually have a photograph of the Hitchcock bladderpod. It's a Forest Service sensitive species. It's a little plant in the mustard family, but I do have a photograph of Penstemon moriaensis. Actually, it's not a photograph of the plant. It's a photograph of a specimen that I collected while I was in the Snake Range. And it's now actually at the New York Botanical Garden with a couple of my other specimens that I collected while I was out. Then switching to a really unique habitat in the central part of the state, White River Valley. This is another area that's a high priority for conservation. When I knew about it back then, I only knew about these two particular species, Frasergypsicola, the Sunnyside green gentian, and Lipidium nainum. But since then, Mentzelia teamii, named after Jerry Team, who I showed you a picture of earlier. Mentzelia teamii has been discovered. Phacelia parishii has been named there. Eroganum darovii and Cryptantha welshii has been described from that area. So this is Frasergypsicola. Again, these occur on the gypsum soils. Some of these areas are protected, but there is a movement afoot to protect several areas in Nevada. Frasergypsicola and Lipidium nainum. Frasergypsicola is BLM sensitive. Lipidium nainum, you can see the size of it with the nickel there. Lipidium nainum is no longer, it's kind of a watch list plant. But again, notice the white gypsum-like soil. This is down in the valley bottom. And then moving on to Cactaceae species, there are some cactus species that are really quite attractive. The beautiful cholla, or the Sanchoya, which used to be known as Opuntia pulchella. There's only two species in the genus. The other species has yellow flowers. This is also known, or was known, to occur in California, but it now has a CNPS standing of 2B2. The Hermit Cactus, Scleracctus polyancistris, also occurs, or also was known to occur in California. Its CNPS status is 4.2, but it also occurs in southern Nevada and southern California. This is the type species of the genus, but it's rather atypical for a Scleracctus. It has the longest spines and the largest flowers of the Sclerocactus genus. So it's rather atypical. This is the other species. You can see here the flowers of this Sclerocactus, Scleractus pubis spinous, are much smaller. The plant is much smaller. Only a portion of it extends up out of the ground. This is the Great Basin fishhook cactus, Scleracactus pubis spinous. This particular plant tends to occur on limestone or dolomite derived soils. And again, because I'm a buckwheat fan, I put in the Beetley buckwheat and the wind-loving buckwheat. Eroganum beetlei is how it was originally described in 1972, but it's since been recharacterized, it's been placed as a subspecies, as a variety actually, of Eroganum rosense. It has more oval-shaped leaves and glandular involucres. Really attractive plant, the Beetley Buckwheat. And then the Eroganum Animothylum, which occurs in the Sonoma range. They're both BLM sensitive plants. Eroganum Animothylum is a Nevada endemic. And I'm gonna leave it at that and let you know that for putting the thesis together and for putting this slideshow together, there were a lot of people that helped me with it, and these are a few of them. And there's one organization in particular that's working on climate change in high mountain ecosystems, and that's Gloria Great Basin. I'm sure some of you may know of it. There are some CNPS members involved in that organization. And that's the end of the PowerPoint, and I'm really bummed. I'm still want to try on the slideshow, but if you've got any questions, I'll take your questions, or we can try one more time on the slideshow.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we encourage any questions to get thrown into the chat really quick? If you want to just try one more time. I've done my explanation, so
Yeah.
I don't have to babble anymore about boring IT things. And also, actually, let me just take a moment. I don't want to be too casual just because you're the president. I want to take a moment to thank you, to say that was a wonderful presentation. There's a few comments coming in here. I definitely learned a lot about, I actually was born and raised in Nevada and didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Whereabouts?
In Las Vegas.
Oh, okay. Jeez. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, that was lovely. The photos were wonderful, and that was so fun to hear about your research. So it looks like, based on these comments, everyone else agrees.
Okay, let me get out of. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, bummer on the bummer on the slides, you guys. I don't know. I guess, you know, I was worried that something like that was going to happen, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
I will figure it out, and maybe we'll put it up on. Maybe I'll turn it into a YouTube video, and we'll put it up alongside the video of this presentation. We'll get it that way.
Yeah, that sounds great. We did have one question pop up, which is about where the Ash Meadows Preserve is. I went ahead and just Googled. Looks like this is right. The Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge is an official designation for it right now.
Yeah, it's right over the California border in southern Nevada. I think it's Nye County.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think it's Nye County. Hard to sort of describe, but if you want to send me it.
I dropped a link in the chat that takes you to the Fish and Wildlife Service page.
Oh, okay, great.
But yeah, I looked it up really quick, and it looks like, yeah, it's just over the border there, those southern mountains.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah, not a lot of questions, but it was such a lovely talk. I'm gonna go to Ash Meadows as soon as I can now. I've never been, if you can believe it.
Oh, it's a great spot. I mean, hopefully we'll have a good spring, and you know, that's definitely the time to go, and it's just really a magical spot.
Oh, is Mindy raising her hand? Feel free to unmute yourself and chime in.
Yeah.
Hi, Melissa. I really enjoyed the trip down memory lane, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, okay. I really am bummed about the slideshow, because I was just really wanting to inspire you guys and just get you moving with the music and everything. And oh
yeah,
well.
yeah, we understand. Oh, I was wondering if you want to talk any more about your veg classification, how, you know, were there any challenges that you had, any were you guys like responsible for putting these things on the map, on the veg classification map?
Well, okay. Number one, I never published. And the reason for that is there's a couple of different reasons. Number one, I kind of wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. Sorry for, my family had been going through some traumas, and I wanted to sort of, I needed to get home. And the other thing is that it was a so broad brush, covering the whole state, and, with just a few sample sites in some areas. I mean, it was just so broad brush. There have been, I'm kind of proud to say that there have been studies done since then. There's one done very similar to mine in northeastern Nevada, and they actually reference my master's thesis in the references and everything. So, that makes me feel pretty good. I've been referenced a couple of different places. So it's a really broad brush classification. And no, I don't know if there is, to my knowledge, there isn't an effort afoot in Nevada to map sensitive or to map vegetation types like there is in California. The mapping like CMPS or the CNDDB is doing. So we didn't do any mapping or anything like that. And again, it was so broad brush. It was a great learning experience for me. And it was just so broad brush. The primary focus, I mean, my master's degree is actually in range resources. I'm a botanist by heart, but my degree is in range resources, and the primary driver and instigator for the Forest Service funding this kind of work is really for, grazing resources. They eat the grass, and so the sagebrush-grass vegetation, the classifications are important so that they can know where these communities are from the standpoint of grazing resources. So I don't know if that answers your question, but does that help?
Sure. It sounds like you did a lot of work. So
Yeah.
Nice job.
No, it was great work, and NVCS might still want that data.
Yeah. Well, but I still have my data sheets. I went back and looked at them, and I've looked, unfortunately, with the exception of the grass species, and let's see, the grass species, I sent all my stipa specimens to Mary Barkworth at Utah State. Huh? And so all of those are housed at Utah State, the stipa or Achnothyrum. The Lescarella, which is now Phaseria, went to Reed Rollins, and those are housed at Harvard now. Some, like I said, went to New York Botanical Garden, and some are at the University of Nevada, Reno. But because I left, I kind of lost track of some of my collections, which is my biggest regret of all of this, through all of this. So I did lose some of my collections, but I actually, it was really fun going back through these slides and going back through my data sheets. It's like, here I am, 60, almost 68 years old or whatever. And I went back, and I just, wow, I did all this. And I've become, I think I'm a recovering botanist or something, it's like I'm a botanist again. I was, but how your life goes through different patterns. I'm being Serena Watson. That's it. Anyway.
Yeah, well,
so it's just been kind of fun going back and looking at the field notes, and anyway, enough of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Zena.
Yeah. Thanks for your questions, Mindy.
I think you kind of already answered this through that answer, but someone did ask if you have any publications on Eriogonums.
I do not have publications on Eriogonums. My only publications are soft literature things through CNGA. I do a lot of writing about rare grasses. Like I've done status reports on Swolenia alexandrae, the Eureka dune grass, and other, rare species and things for, the Plant Society and stuff like that. I mean, my interest has always been pretty much in rare plants. I started out studying rare plants in Nevada. I was lucky to get a job studying in the Great Basin, and that's what led to my fellowship. I worked for a consulting company and, did some extensive research, and that led to me getting this fellowship. And I just developed an interest in rare plants and then vegetation communities. And so no, I don't have any publications of my own, but if you Google James Reveal, he's the expert in Eroganum, and there's also an Eroganum Society, which I was a member of, but it's a very small organization, but you can become a member of the Eroganum Society, and they have a meeting every year. Last year, I believe their meeting was in Elko, and that would have been a great place to go and see buckwheats, because, Nevada and Utah are just like, what do we call it? Grand Central Station for buckwheat.
Hotspots?
Hotspots, yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
So. All right, guys.
Yeah.
Yay, buckwheats. Yes.
Yay, buckwheats. Okay. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening, and Melissa for that wonderful talk. I really enjoyed that. That was so awesome. So
all right,
despite the slideshow, don't worry about the slideshow.
Right. Keep an eye on the YouTube site, because I'll pop it up there. I'll pop it up there. Yeah.
That'll be great.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Happy
good night,
Thursday.
all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Charlie.